Um, at, at this time, I'd like to, let's see, make sure I'm going in order here. There we go. Got that done. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. And before I do that, at the risk of sounding maudlin right now, I've known Dr. Cheryl for many, many years here at Dalton. Probably many of you have. And you won't meet a kinder man on this earth. And besides being a great doctor, he's just a kind fellow. And I spoke with him a few months back about possibly being a speaker at Rotary. I asked him if he'd ever spoken at Rotary. He mentioned you had one time, long time back, if I remember correctly. Is that what you told me?
What?
That you'd spoken at Rotary
Yes.
before.
35 years.
About 35 years ago. So it's been a minute. So we're glad to have Dr. Cheryl with us. I have some information I'd like to read to you about him. Reginald Cheryl, MD, is medical director of Dalton Plastic Surgery. He has been in solo practice in Dalton since 1982. He's a graduate of Loma Linda University School of Medicine in 1977. Dr. Cheryl went on to a general surgery residency at Loma Linda University Medical Center. After completing 3 years in general surgery, he transferred to Wright State University Kettering Medical Center in Dayton, Ohio for his plastic surgery residency. He completed his training in 1982. Dr. Cheryl is a board certified plastic surgeon and is a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, the Georgia Society of Plastic Surgeons, the Southern Medical Association, the Medical Association of Georgia, and the Whitfield Murray County Medical Society. He has 3 children and 6 lovely grandsons. Let's give Dr. Cheryl a warm Rotary welcome. Thanks, sir. Get your program. You got the clicker?
I got the clicker. Thank you very much. Very good to be with you again. It's been about 35 years, so I'm really looking forward to my next presentation. Hope all of you will be able to attend at that time too. Today I'm talking about the biggest organ system in the body, and that's the skin. Most people don't think of the skin being an organ system, but it's huge. You know, here in Dalton, we talk about square yards. Well, now we talk about square feet because everything has gone up. But if you take a human body and you skin it, and you've seen the polar bear rugs that they have, it is going to cover about 2 square meters. That's a pretty good size. So if you're talking square feet, you're talking 16 to 21 square feet of skin. It is the biggest organ system. If you look at the liver, that weighs around 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds. Skin weighs anywhere from 6 to 7 pounds. And we have a lot of people that probably have 10 pounds of skin. It kind of stretches as necessary. And so here we are at Dalton Country Club. We have a pool just on the other side of the road. We have a golf course. And so we're always getting a lot of exposure to the sun. And it's a very important system to take care of. When you're young, tans are very much in, and you see people going to the sunbeds. I was surprised to find out that in Brazil and in Australia, sunbeds are illegal. That was a surprise to me. You think of all the tans, the Brazilian butt lift, and some of these other things, and these gorgeous bodies. They're not supposed to be able to use sunbeds in those areas, so they have to get natural sun. The one problem with sunbeds is that this is for busy people. If you're really busy and you don't have 2 hours to spend in the sun, you go to the sunbed. Your sunbed will only take 10, 15 minutes, and you can get the same amount of exposure. So sunbeds are something that we're not a big fan of. Now, I love to play golf, and I'm out there every opportunity I can get. And I had a friend from South Africa. He said, you know, I love golf. I'd like to come play on your course. I said, fine. Just meet me at the first tee. And this is Hans. He showed up like this, and I go, Hans, you can't do this. This is, you know, a distinguished country club. And so Then they said proper golf attire required on the golf course at all times. This is something new that happened because of Hans here, but the more exposure you get to the sun, the more damage you get. And it's an accumulation of time. When you have the southern United States where people are getting a lot more sun than they do in the Northeast, the incidence of melanoma, the incidence of skin cancer is about twice what it is in the northern countries. I would assume Siberia probably doesn't have any skin cancer at all at that point. This is Gary Player, and Hans said, well, this is the way we do it in South Africa. And so he was using Gary Player as an example. But kind of hard to criticize that. But if you look at the Ryder Cup that was just played, you didn't see anybody dressed like this. They have to be covered a little bit more. Now, this is the proper way you should be on the golf course. This was this spring, and it was cold. And this is one of those sayings, good friends don't let good friends do stupid things alone. And so they said, let's go out there. So I came out and I thought this was rather interesting. You wouldn't know whether that's me or one of my partners, but that is me. If you are at the golf course, and so many of our golf courses are maintained by the Hispanics, and most of them will have a coat, they'll have long sleeves, and they are really taking good care of their skin, and they are better protected than those of us that are redheaded and blue-eyed and more vulnerable to the sun. There are a lot of things that grow on the skin that look like skin cancer. Anytime you see something that looks raised, it looks like a wart, you think, well, this is it. My time is up. I'm about to go. But most of the things that I see in the office are just as benign as can be. And some of the people have had a hard time sleeping because their beautician said, you need to have that checked. And just that little bit of doubt scares them to death. Well, they don't want to go because they're afraid we're going to go, yeah, this is the bad one. But most of the things that we see are very, very friendly. And one of the most common are called seborrheic keratoses. They look like warts, they feel like warts. This tends to go more on the trunk and the head and neck. The arms can have them, but not near as much. I have people that have literally thousands of these on their back. If you were to feel their back, you would think they were a dinosaur because it is just as rough as a lizard. An actinic keratosis, actinic means related to the sun, and it's due to sun damage. And it is not from your first or second sunburn. This is dozens of exposures, hundreds of exposures to the sun, and it can be a little crusty. It might bleed from time to time. Anytime you have something that is bleeding, you need to have it checked out. Now, for a lot of us, we just simply nicked ourselves shaving, but sometimes there's a little aberration on the surface of the skin that makes that razor click. Now, when we talk about skin cancer, the good news about skin cancer, it almost always has a happy ending. There are some people that they hear that word cancer, and it is a scary word. About 1 in 4 of us in the world are going to die of cancer sometime in our life. Now, we might be 95 years old. We may be males with prostate cancer or something else, but something is going to get us eventually. But with skin cancer, we have about 5 to 6 million cases of skin cancer in the United States every year. And out of that group, there will be about 10,000 deaths. So if you do the numbers, that's not that bad. When you look at so many of the other cancers, this isn't even put in cancer statistics. Melanoma is recorded by the CDC. They want to know exactly how many cases of melanoma there are. But when it comes to basal cell, squamous cell, which are the other common ones, they don't even keep those statistics. So it's kind of extrapolated, and that's where they come up with this 5.5 to 6 million. But when you consider that out of all those millions of people, population of Atlanta and, you know, most of our big cities in Georgia come to that 5, 6 million and 10,000 deaths. And that too many. We'd like to prevent that. But out of that, the basal cell and squamous cell make out 2,000s of those. And so if you have a basal cell, your chances of survival are 99.999%. You're going to make it as long as you just don't let it go for 15 or 20 years. Then you get into trouble. Squamous cell is a little bit more aggressive, but still your percentage of survival is 99.95%. The people that become the statistics with most of the basal cell and squamous cells are people that have had transplants. We are transplanting everything nowadays. We're transplanting pancreas, liver, kidney, spleens, lungs, hearts, and all of these people have to be immunocompromised. You have to knock down the normal resistance of the body to that foreign body. And so most of the people that do die of the squamous cell and basal cell are usually immunocompromised. We do have people that do die that don't have kidneys or transplants of some kind, but normally they've been in the sun all the time. They are construction workers, they're farmers, and they are in there day in, day out. I actually shingled houses when I was in college, and I was the only one that had on a t-shirt. Most of them had on a small pair of shorts, and they were out there and they looked so dark. I mean, they definitely looked Hispanic because they were just so tan. And I was the one white boy that was out there that didn't have much color at all, might have a little bit on my arms. But back then we didn't have sunscreen either. And as a teenager, I had 2 real bad burns. And so I found out very quickly I have to cover up. And so I did. And that has helped me a lot because I am covered up, just like the picture that I showed with the big hat. I do wear a hat with the brim, and I wear usually a 50 to a 60 sunscreen at all times. The basal cell is the most common of the skin cancers, and these are just some examples of it. The nose is the #1 site that gets into trouble with skin cancer. So if there is one spot that you put on sunscreen, put it on your nose. If you have chapstick that you use on your lips, smear it on your nose. Just keep doing that because the nose gets into everybody's business and it gets into your business and it gets into a lot of trouble. So up there we have a basal cell on the nose. The treatment is, if it's on you, it's a major surgery. To us, it's a fairly minor surgery, but we have to do a skin graft in order to get that taken out. Now, if it's on the back or the arm or other places, we can simply cut it out and put it back together. That talks about we can do a shave biopsy, we can excise it, and then there's Mohs surgery. To me, Mohs surgery is a very aggressive surgery that isn't indicated most of the time. But in my practice, I might do something like a Mohs once every year or 2. There are other people that do it every day and do 30 to 50 a week. But you can kill flies with the fly swatter. You can also use a cannon. And sometimes I think the Mohs surgery is a little more aggressive. Now, this is a squamous cell. And a lot of times I can't tell whether it's a squamous cell or a basal cell. We're looking more for something that's red. One of the nice things that you have with your cell phones now, if you have something that you're questioning, take a selfie so you can look to see if it is changing and what it's doing. But many of these can be taken care of in 5 minutes. You simply numb it, which is major, particularly for us men. We suffer a lot more than women. And we shave it, we clean it out, and that we usually take care of it. Now, right, and the survival rate is probably getting in there. 1,000 of those melanoma cases, about half are invasive. That means it just goes a little deeper than a millimeter. But the other, those have a 10-year survival of 99+%. So if you catch melanoma early, it has a wonderful recovery rate. In fact, it's just like any other cancer, but this is showing how deep does the cancer go. And normally if it's less than that 1 millimeter that you see there, where there are the 5 little depth gauge is going down, that's where your prognosis is extremely good because it's right in the upper layers of the skin. And so that's what we want to do, is get these things early. And most of the people that come in think they have melanoma. They actually have a seborrheic keratosis, which is 100% benign. And so it's great to give people good news. You know, you don't want to say, well, you have this, you have that, but say, hey, you're going to do good. This is very early. And so some of the things that you're looking at when it comes to a melanoma is the same thing you will see with a seborrheic keratosis. It can be irregular. It can be different variations of color. And if it's bigger than a pencil eraser, we get a little bit more concerned about it than if it's smaller than a pencil eraser. And normally if it's smaller than a pencil eraser, it usually is very, very early, and it usually has a very good prognosis. Here again, we have good friends. Don't let other friends do stupid things alone. And so, you know, a lot of times we do things kind of, hey, let's all go skinny dipping. And all of a sudden everybody decides to do something that they wouldn't normally do. But since it's your friends, you go, why not? But the more that you are covered up, the better off you'll do. Ultraviolet radiation is bad for your skin. Now, it does give you vitamin D. It has a good side too. So you have to look at the advantages and disadvantages of everything to determine, well, am I going to get more good out of being out in the sun? I have made that determination that we can all rationalize what we do, but I go, well, golf is good. I'm doing some walking. I'm getting up. I'm moving. And yes, I am getting some sun, but I try to wear long sleeves. But if you had seen me this last Sunday here at the country club, I was in short sleeve shirts that I had on a hat and had 60 sunscreen on. But when you get into a sunbed, again, just because it is concentrated for busy people, so you don't have to spend that 2 hours in the sun, you can go in there and get exposure. They have them where you can simply walk in now, and you just they turn on the light and you just stand there, you rotate, and you're getting exposure everywhere. I mean, everywhere is getting exposed. So the way to prevent the skin cancer, limit your exposure. That's very, very important. Even during the winter, you are wearing V-necks. A lot of times you're getting some exposure. I tell women and men as well, hit your nose. Men need to hit their ears because we don't have the hair. Some of us have less than others. And so your ears are very exposed. The nose and the ear and the scalp, the big chrome dome, have no muscle. There is simply skin that is stretched and tethered over this bone or this cartilage. And so it heats up very rapidly and gets damaged much more quickly. So if you have the choice of coming out like Gary Player versus this old man in the lower picture, cover up as much as possible. Any questions?
So, Dr. Cheryl, all the patients see, do you run into the severe melanomas ever?
Certainly. Any physician is going to run into some of the time, but a really serious melanoma case is usually once or twice a year. Now, I have people coming to me for a second opinion. They said, I've been told I have melanoma and this is really serious. I'm scheduled for surgery tomorrow. I go, there is no cancer that is that bad that you need to be scheduled for emergency surgery tomorrow. When I was in my training, if you had breast cancer, we'd say, well, we just did your biopsy. It was breast cancer. We have to do surgery tomorrow. These people were so overwhelmed with the enormity of the situation, they couldn't make a rational decision. Well, that isn't done nowadays. You say, well, we have breast cancer, but you know, we can set up a time that this can be done, and it can be done in 2 or 3 weeks. That cancer, whatever kind it is, has been going on for months, many times years before it ever actually shows itself. And I had my first basal cell about 4 years ago, and I was really stunned because I go, man, I've been covered up all the time, and it was right here. And most people, when you get your first basal cell, you think it's a pimple because it looks like a pimple. A mole, a pimple, a basal cell, squamous cell, they all look the same when they're small. when people come in to see me and say, what do you think this is? I go, I don't know. I am going to have you come back in 3 or 4 months. We'll take a look again. We're going to take a picture today, and then we'll get you back in 3 or 4 months. If it's gone, it was a pimple. It's still there. It's either a mole or something else, but it'll let us know. So if you are told, you know, that looks like pre-cancer. I had a dermatologist that looked at my head and said, you are covered in cancer. I go, I'm not covered in cancer. These are actinic keratosis. Oh, no, this is the bad kind. This is squamous cell. Well, this was 20 some years ago. I still have my head. And so, you know, if you have something that just sounds like it doesn't make sense, get a second opinion. That's true of anything. I had a herniated disc, and so I had to have an MRI. And so while I am in this MRI machine, what I'm thinking, what are they going to come up with that I don't even want to know about? And so they came up with about 4 or 5 things, and I go, I'm good with it. I'm good with it. I'm still here. 4 years later, nothing has been done to those things, but there are times that you can be pushed into a corner and you're just fighting to get out. Sometimes you overdo it, but melanoma, the real bad invasive melanoma, can show up, you know, once or twice a year, but it's not something that happens real quickly. And the saying, if you're looking for something, you're going to find it, is very true. If you're looking for money on the ground and you find it, if you keep your head down, you're going to find more and more money, but you're not going to sustain a living doing it. I am always amazed. I go to the beach every year. I moonbathe more than anything else, but you see these people with the little metal detectors, and they're there early morning, late at night, you know, trying to find something, and every now and then you find something that thrills you. But you know, when you're looking for melanoma, they say the incidence is going up. Well, it is, because we're looking for it. People are more tuned into it. So many of these melanomas people have had for years and years, and they will die a natural death, and they'll still have melanoma, but they weren't even aware of it. So if we start taking every mole that we see and start checking it, we're going to find some that might be called dysplastic nevi. They may be melanoma in situ, but melanoma in situ has 100% survival rate. So they go, well, you got melanoma, this is bad, we're going to have to do something radical. You don't need anything radical when you have 100% survival. You need to have it taken out, but you don't need to go wild about it. Well, now you know everything that I know.
Can you get skin cancers in places where the sun doesn't shine?
It's much rarer. I have a friend that he started to have bowel problems, and they finally did a biopsy, and he had melanoma inside his body, and we could not find anything on the outside. When I was in my training, we had some, but that is the exception. You know, you can get hit by a meteorite. That's the way I've chosen to go if I can, you know, but you know, there's just risks that we take in life in general. And generally, the more things are covered, the less likely there is to be a melanoma there. But there can be melanoma can show up and you never find a primary source. But that's rare.
Ray, you said you use 60 sunscreen. What's the comments about, oh no, 30 is enough, 20, 30, 40 is enough?
I don't know if I heard the question correctly. I'm a little hard of hearing, but the older we get, the more risk we have of getting skin cancer because we've had more exposure to the sun. So when we are looking at the incidence, melanoma is almost unheard of in the pediatric population. If you have somebody that is under the age of 20 that has melanoma, that is extremely rare. And I've had people say, I was just told that my child has melanoma. My answer is your child does not have melanoma. And they go, how do you know? I go, because children just don't get melanoma. That is so rare. And when they come in and we check them, they don't have melanoma. So as you get older, you add another decade, you have a greater incidence. But it's also true of prostate cancer. If we all live to be 85 years old, if you look hard enough, you're going to find prostate cancer in half of us. You know, women are spared, but men, if you live to 85, most of men will have cancer if you're looking hard enough. My dad had prostate cancer and he just felt like he was missing out because all of his friends had it. So he had to have it. So he went to see his urologist and they did some biopsies and they said, we didn't find it, but I don't think we did a good biopsy. And so they did it again and they finally found it. So then he got to do the state-of-the-art proton therapy, which is extremely expensive. And he was 82. And so he goes in and, oh, Mr. Sherrill, we're so glad to have you. It's time for another treatment. You don't feel a whole lot. You feel a little tired. And basically they cooked his bottom. And so then he was incontinent, had bladder bleeds, his life got a whole lot worse. It wasn't much of a quality of life after that. And so sometimes the treatment is so much worse than the disease. I decided I was going to solve the problem. I don't check my prostate anymore. I go, I'm just going to take it with me. I don't care what happens. After seeing what happened to my dad, I'm out of there. So, any other questions?
How much time do you need, son, to get the value of the vitamin D?
I don't know. You know, when this COVID situation first came about in 1976, the CDC, all the scientists said that the swine flu was coming back. Well, I was a senior medical student, and so I was just getting into the good stuff. And I go, if this isn't my luck, here I get to the good part, I'm going to eventually start getting paid, and we're all going to get swine flu and die. Well, turned out there was no swine flu. And so I go, well, that's actually when Jimmy Carter was elected president. A lot of that was over the botching of the swine flu and everything. And so I done forgot your question.
About the vitamin D in the sun.
About the vitamin D. That's supposed to be helpful. And I'm golfing all the time. My mother used to say, you guys need to get out and get your vitamin D. She wanted us out of the house. It had nothing to do with vitamin D, but she trying to get us out of the house. And so they said that vitamin D was good with COVID. So I decided to check my vitamin D. I'm golfing all the time. I'm out in the sun and it was low. So it's kind of like my prostate. I just quit checking it. I go, I'm just going to get as much sun as I can and be as protective of myself as I can, and then see what happens. I get more benefit from being out in the sun, getting my steps in, so forth. So I can't really answer that question because I am not a scientist about vitamin D, but some of the people I know get a lot of my vitamin D. If you do a blood test, they're going to be low. And go, well, that doesn't make much sense. Sun is good for us. I mean, we have the seasonal affective disorder. When the days start getting shorter, days are getting shorter. A little bit of depression sets in. I'm ready for next spring. Thank you.
So how many of you learned something new today you didn't know? Raise your hand. I did too. Learned a lot of good stuff. Dr. Sherrill, on behalf of our club, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Smitty.
Thank you for the information you gave us. And I'll make sure to have my hat on and my glasses and my scarf and get all wrapped up good when I get on the golf course. I want you to know we're going to be donating a book in your honor to the library here in Dalton. And I've already given you something that Tammy made for you to hang on your Christmas tree.
Thank you very much.
So we're glad to have you.